Okay, I know what you're all thinking. Great, now we've got to listen to some white guy mansplain diversity to us. If you looked up the opposite of diversity in a thesaurus, you pretty much see me. So you're well within your rights to wonder what I think I have to bring to this conversation. Of course, the most important thing I bring to this conversation is my ears. I'm here to listen, I'm here to learn. I want to become a more effective ally for all of the underrepresented groups in the creative and technology industries where I work, because I believe in a simple truth that applies in these industries as I believe it does to all areas of human endeavor. The more diverse a group of people is that are working together towards a common goal, the better the outcome. It's only by bringing together people from different backgrounds with fresh perspectives and new ideas that we create the conditions for innovation. Let's have a look at a real-world case study. Okay, I'm joking. Of course, that's a fine counterexample of just how bad things can get when you don't have diverse voices around the table. And I've got some bad news for these white dinosaurs. A Boston Consulting Group study of about 1,700 companies around the world found that when they controlled for other factors, companies with diverse leadership generated around 20% more revenue than those without. But whoop-de-doo, right? That's a nice number to have on a slide, but just as numbers have a habit of doing, it dehumanizes the issue. So let's go back to an even older white guy. By far one of my favorite principles in all of science and philosophy was Aristotle's observation that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. But I'm going to paraphrase Aristotle because I actually believe that the whole is only greater than the sum of its parts if those parts are different enough from each other. Otherwise, you just end up with a whole lot of the same thing, like these guys. What are these young white men so angry about? They're disillusioned because they've been raised on the same mythology that we're all brought up on in the West. You might know it as the American dream. I prefer to think of it as the capitalist myth, but you know, tomato, tomato. It's the idea that if you set your mind to something, if you work hard enough, if you make sacrifices and never give up, you can achieve whatever you want to. It's a great idea, but the problem is it's just not true. What is true, and what's used as evidence to prop up the mythology, is that just about everybody who ever did anything monumental followed that same formula. But correlation is not causation, and for every one of these worthy heroes, there are millions of people around the world who followed the same formula, who set their mind to something, worked hard, made sacrifices, never gave up, and still never achieved the level of success that they were aiming for. Because it turns out that working hard is not as important as being lucky. Do you really think that Andre de Grasse came second in successive world champion and Olympic races to Usain Bolt because he didn't set his mind to winning? Of course he set his mind to winning. I bet if anything, Andre de Grasse trained harder than Usain Bolt, but that his hard work wasn't enough to overcome Bolt's genetic advantages. Now, I'm not saying that Usain Bolt doesn't deserve his success. What I am saying is that if we really valued hard work as much as we say we do, Andre de Grasse would be much more rich and famous than he is. And that brings me back to these guys. And by these guys, I don't just mean a bunch of neo-Nazis in Charlottesville. These guys are emblematic of straight white men everywhere who are pushing back against a diversifying world. These guys are the Gamergate trolls. These guys are the guy that wrote that manifesto at Google, the guy that got fired from CERN for whining that the field of physics has become biased against men. These guys are victims in their own minds, and they're victims of their circumstances. Because of their upbringing, their community, their education, they're burdened with three biases that prevent them from seeing that diversity is a good thing for them too. First, because they haven't been exposed to much diversity in their lives, they haven't seen that the whole can be greater than the sum of its parts when those parts are different enough. Two, because their own lives aren't easy. They're blinded to their entitlement and their privilege. They don't recognize that there are very real barriers that make it harder for women, minorities, and the LGBTQ to get ahead in life. And thirdly, because they see women, minorities, and the LGBTQ through a tribal lens as others, and because they've been brought up on the zero-sum game capitalist mythology, they believe that any policy or any change that gives an advantage to one of those other tribes must come at a cost to their own tribe. And listen, if you've ever heard yourself thinking, hey, I got to where I am through hard work, why should anybody else have it easier than I did? That voice inside your head, that's one of these guys too. Just think of the incredible string of coincidences that had to happen over billions of years, from the Big Bang to your parents banging, for each of us to even get the opportunity to experience life at all. Sure, we all deserve credit for what we've made out of the opportunities that life has given us. But speaking for myself, when I think of all of the things that I've ever done to improve my chances of success in life, all of the hard work, the sacrifices, it doesn't add up to improving my chances of success as much as the single cosmic dice roll that resulted in me being born a straight white male in a first world country. Because of those 4 entirely arbitrary characteristics, anything that I've ever set my mind to doing has been that much easier for me to do than it would be for others. Because of those 4 entirely arbitrary characteristics, nobody, not myself or anybody else, has ever questioned whether what I was trying to do was a suitable thing for me to be doing. Sure, I have self-doubts. We all have those, but as a straight white man, my self-doubts usually hinge around things that I can do something about. If I'm worried that I'm not good enough at something, I know I can work harder, I can practice. But if your self-doubt revolves around something that's outside of your control, like your gender, race, or sexual identity, then those self-doubts are much harder to overcome, especially when they're culturally reinforced. There's no inherent biological or evolutionary reason that a straight white man should be better at or more inclined to do any of the things I've been lucky enough to do in my life. Sure, in prehistoric times, it made sense for the women to stay home and look after the children while the men went out to hunt. But if you think your job is anything like hunting a woolly mammoth, you need to put down the PlayStation controller, my friend. Now, some people will argue that women just are not as inclined to enter into the creative and technical industries or to seek out positions of leadership. But if that was true, if the only reason that women don't make up 50% of the talent and leadership in the creative and technical industries, if that was all just down to women being less inclined than men, then why is it that gay men and non-white men are not to be found in the industry and in leadership positions in proportions that match the broader population? Do you expect me to believe that all of these underrepresented groups are just less inclined? Or does it make more sense to acknowledge that there are actually cultural and opportunity barriers that make it harder for people to get ahead if they're not a straight white man? And I call this talk, Why Straight White Men Must Champion Diversity, because straight white men tend to be in a position to do so. But straight white women also need to champion diversity. Gay white men need to champion diversity. Straight Asian men, everybody needs to champion diversity. If we agree that diversity is a good thing, then all of us who've made it into positions of leadership through a combination of luck and hard work, we owe it to those less lucky than ourselves to give them the opportunity to make it too. So what can we do? Well, let's have a look at the recruitment process. The conventional wisdom is that you should hire the person who, based on their education and experience, you think will do the best job of the role that you're hiring for. And when I put it like that, it's hard to see what's wrong with that as a principle. The problem is that because the scales have been tilted in favor of straight white men for so long, straight white men are much more likely to satisfy those criteria, which raises a very obvious and valid question. Is it fair to make it harder for straight white men to get a job than for women or minorities? I say yes it is, because of sushi. Let's say that straight white men are like sushi restaurants. I work in an industry with a lot of straight white men, and I live in a city with a lot of great sushi restaurants. Does that mean I eat sushi for every meal? No, of course it doesn't. What it does mean is that when I eat sushi, I'm able to be picky about it. I actually hold sushi restaurants to a higher standard because I have so many to choose from. Whenever you hire another straight white man, you're missing out on an opportunity to bring a different background, a new perspective, and fresh ideas to your team. So you better make sure that the straight white men you hire are truly worthy. We need to stop thinking about recruitment just in terms of fulfilling a job function and think about it more in terms of expanding our company culture and increasing our collective capabilities. Ask not what your employees can do for you, but what you can do for your employees to make them feel safe, welcome, respected, and valued. And we need to carry this type of thinking throughout the entire HR pipeline, through training and performance reviews, We need to give everybody soft skills training so that they can appreciate and value diversity in the workplace. And performance reviews should not just be about how well somebody is carrying out their job function. We need to also assess their contribution to company culture. Not only will this kind of thinking help to retain and support the productivity of valuable women, minorities, and LGBTQ talent, but it will also create a culture that will make your company and the industry in general more attractive to those candidates in the first place. And that can only be a good thing, because when we all win, we all win. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, share it, subscribe to the YouTube channel and the Facebook group, and if you have any feedback, write it in the comments below. Cheers.